Hi, I'm Mikkel Weber, founder and auteur of House of Peregrine. Expat, immigrant, pioneer, none of these were a fit, but Peregrine describes what we are all about perfectly. Those that craft their life story with intention. I've spent the last 6 years in awe of the life-changing connections and stories I have experienced while living abroad, and believe it is time for this adventure to be recognized, celebrated, and elevated to the life stage that it is. Through these interviews, I hope to connect those living internationally more deeply to both the place they are living and with themselves and those around them. We cover everything from international finances and meaning-making to global parenting and relationships to make your time abroad more intentional, edifying, and full of beauty. Find us at houseofperegrine.com, where you can find more ways to connect with the ethos of Peregrine. I hope you enjoy today's guest. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the House of Peregrine podcast. I'm Mikkel Weber, and I'm so happy you're joining us today. I first met today's guest through a cartoon that was hanging just outside my house in the streets of Amsterdam, one that made me smile every time I passed it. It featured a king and a queen in a rather cheeky moment on a throne with a caption that read, "A true king knows who comes first." It was by today's guest, Jessica Stahl, the creator of Vanilla Cool Dance, a viral cartoon series and global movement that's changing the way we talk about sex, relationship, and self-expression. Jessica's work is bold, funny, and surprisingly tender, and her story, it's just as layered. She began her career in New York City's advertising world, but when something didn't feel quite right after a breakup, she bought a one-way ticket to Amsterdam, and with no job and no apartment, she had a backpack and a very serious question. What do I actually want? What followed was a year of communal living and a commitment to drawing something every day that was on her mind or her heart, or something that was coming up for her. It ended up unraveling years of old shame and led to the creation of Vanilla Cool Dance. What may have started as a way to reclaim her own story has since become a place where tens of thousands of people come to feel a little more seen, a little less alone, and a lot less ashamed. The message? There's no part of our humanity, whether it's sex, power, consent, that's too taboo to talk about. In fact, that's often where the most important conversations come to life. Jessica was recently named Sex and Relationships Creator of the Year and recognized by Cannes Lion as a global creative leader. Even more than the accolades she's acquired, what stands out about her is how she uses humor and cartoons to disarm, connect, and remind us that growth doesn't have to be serious to be profound. In short, Jessica has a rare ability to call people in instead of calling them out, and that leads to some massive breakthroughs and awareness. I'm so excited to share this conversation with you, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Jessica. I am so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much for having me, and the nicest intro I've ever received, so thank you for that.
Great. That's what I love to hear. I love to hear that. So I want to start out by you taking us quickly to that moment when you bought the plane ticket, one-way ticket to Amsterdam.
Yes.
Why Amsterdam? Just walk us through that moment.
Yeah. So I had always dreamed of living abroad, and back at the time, I had a boyfriend before the breakup, the one who broke up with me, who wasn't as interested in as I was. So already at that point, I had gone on a solo backpacking adventure throughout Europe. And I think that's what planted the seed of, wow, there's so many different ways to live that aren't the um, way we were living in the US, and maybe ways that I had identified more with. So when he broke up with me, that was really in my mind of, if he hadn't been in the picture or the reason to go back to the States in the first place, where would I have gone to next? And I knew that Amsterdam was international. I knew that it was a creative city with a lot of different agencies. So I thought, let's go there.
That's amazing. So you knew a little bit about it and decided, and you really leaped. You leapt. Like no job, no anything. You knew you wanted to maybe have a relationship with the city for a while.
Yes, and I had never been here. I didn't look up the weather, so when I arrived and it was raining in the middle of November, I was completely caught off guard. But I think for me to, I have an easier time taking giant leaps than knowing all the details.
Yeah. Do you think you're the kind of person that if you knew that it might have stopped you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People asked why not the UK, like, oh, why are you not moving to London? And I said the weather. Turns out I moved somewhere where it rains even more. So
I can identify with that. I think a lot of people can. When you know, do you describe it as like intuition or just adventure? I always ask people this question because House of Peregrine, Peregrine means one from abroad or an outsider. And usually this comes with this ability to fly or to when something doesn't feel right because peregrines, they live on every continent of the world. And so they can live anywhere. They just go where seems right for a season or a time. And so I feel like people like you, like us, have that. So can you explain it any other way besides it was just time to go?
um yeah, I think that sums it up very well. I think it was just gut. Like I struggle a lot with making small life decisions, but the big ones are always very intuitive and always I have the idea and then I have to execute it. And there's no way that I'm going to not try.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love that. And I love connecting with people who are like that because it's really hard to explain. Does your family understand this about you?
Yes, I think that they knew it before I did actually. So when I had told my mom that booked I was going to book a ticket, she wasn't surprised. I think she may be surprised that I stayed, but the idea of moving to Europe, I think she always knew that this would could happen for me. So I've
Yeah.
been very lucky in that to be supported.
Yeah, nice. So they're kind of like, "Oh, Jessica, she's just like that."
Um, yeah, maybe I don't give them the choice. I just am who I am and I'm lucky they love me
Yeah.
anyways. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's everyone has different experiences that way, but I think it's lovely that they know that about you and before you knew yourself. That's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Um, so then I want to tell you my reflection. So when I found out that you weren't Dutch, I had a kind of a visceral reaction, like, how brave. She just put their king and queen, and you've done several cartoons since. But the first one I saw was near King's Day, and maybe you can walk us through your first one. But my impression was when I found out you weren't Dutch, oh my God, she is so brave to give this level of commentary or use this device in a place that she's not from. So I that's a compliment to you. It's a very
Thank
brave
you.
thing.
Thank you. Yes. I mean, I love to be on the line of brave to stupid ratio to walk that fine balance. But yes, to make that kind of commentary, political commentary, societal commentary, it was definitely a risk because I'm not Dutch. But because of my interesting onboarding to the Netherlands. So, having lived in that 17-person university house with my Dutch roommates, I have felt very integrated into the Dutch culture, into knowing people that I can pulse check things. So, I had a pretty good indication of the level of how people talk about the king. Of course, this cartoon was to transcend the actual king and to be more about metaphorical kings in general, but
Yeah.
and also how the Dutch humor is. But it was definitely a risk, and I wasn't sure how society would react. So I
Yeah.
was scared.
Yeah. Well, and tell me how I would love to hear how this evolved. Like tell us the story. There's a whole story before it made it to the streets of Amsterdam on
Yeah,
King's Day, right? So maybe tell me that story.
yeah,
As we know, these stories don't unfold linearly until we look back. And so tell me, let's rewind to how from that moment of you putting your first mural on the wall in Amsterdam. Where did
yeah.
it start for you?
Great. Well, similar to booking a one-way ticket to Amsterdam and to having an idea that just lights me up and I have to execute is kind of how this got started. So I had already been learning about the orgasm gap, which is about 30%, and so oh,
Tell
of
us about
how.
it. Tell us about what
Yeah,
you learned.
sure,
Yeah.
sure. So the orgasm gap is the difference in how often a woman versus man reliably orgasms with a partner. And it's quite a big difference. And of course, there's so many factors that go into this. There's one that we grew up in a world where female pleasure wasn't centered, where we grew up watching porn that was focused on male pleasure, that was focused on penetration, when in fact, most women can't achieve an orgasm through penetration alone. So we were not set up for success. Not only that, but women don't realize their pleasure is valid. They don't know how to communicate that to a partner. Men grew up watching the same porn we did, so they also think that we're getting off. So there's just all this miscommunication. But the majority of women, or the majority of people with a vulva, need clitoral stimulation to get off. Um, so I had already been wanting to do something with this, and Geraldine Kemper had also come out with the documentary series Tussin Lock-ins. So it was also quite in the news. And I was walking with a friend, and I remember this distinct memory. It was in the middle of Amsterdam, and we were talking about King's Day, and he or I had said it's crazy, like that on King's Day, so many people probably are going home having sex, and yet the queens are getting screwed. And so that was kind of the original insight. So I thought, okay, how could I take a day that's all about the king and make it about our queens? And how can I help make sure that everyone in the kingdom is coming this King's Day? And so that was kind of how I set out to do it. And I think I had about 4 weeks to put everything
Wow.
into action. Um,
Wow.
so I started drawing right away. I had put out like how gosh, somebody connected me to a woman who helped me with the street art, and we went out and did it all ourselves. And I was wearing this like bright pink raincoat because I didn't even think much about it. She's like, you could have come in a little bit more stealth cover. But yeah, it was such an amazing experience, like to be able to create this from scratch and to really kind of develop my own style. So, for instance, we could have done just normal posters, but I really wanted to take over the entire city and also make it feel like art. So, we ended up doing these giant life size cutouts, and I would like to really make them big and make the statement in your face. And the message and the artwork of what it was for the people listening is that it's an illustration of a king going down on a queen sitting on a throne. They look debatably like the king and the queen of the Netherlands,
Yeah,
with the
it's
with
clear who it is.
with the message, a true king knows who comes first, and the king is wearing the sash that says "Close the orgasm gap."
Mhm.
And yeah, it's a very provocative artwork, but using this playful cartoon to make it more approachable. And we took over the city with these life-size cutouts, as well as thousands of stickers, and in all the bars and all the restaurants and on all the street poles. So the city was completely decked out in this message.
Yeah, it was beautiful. I thought it was really fun. And and what was the reaction? Because I mean, it wasn't like you were being anonymous. It's not like you were hiding it, right?
No, I
It,
had like scan for a good time with my handle so people
yeah,
could find me. Yeah.
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 And what were the messages you were receiving about this?
So mostly positive. I had the first message I received was I had put one up in Amsterdam South, which
Mhm.
was probably where they need it the most, but also where I got a message that was like, "How dare you put this porn up in front of children? I'm calling the police on you." And they found my number and like um, called my phone. So that was a bit intimidating. And I, you have to, when you put your art into the world, it takes a life on its own, and you have
You
to.
You put your art into the world and your phone number with the QR. Like, you did
Yeah.
not.
I didn't put
You.
my phone number out, but I guess it was on my website. Yeah,
Yeah.
publicly. There was no hiding. There was no hiding. And I remember because I was still working at Dopper. So I had like gone to work that morning and just sat there quiet, not sure what was going to happen. Um, and then I got this message and then I thought, oh, fuck, like, but, but I did say to him that, this was for me actually a learning opportunity and nothing is shown in this visual that's like, you don't really see anything. So, one, a child probably isn't going to understand it. And two, so many mothers and fathers have messaged me about how this cartoon has opened up a conversation that they can have with their children.
Yep.
So, so actually, and that is the majority of messages. It's like, I've had moms sending me like their kids sticking the poster and saying, I'm raising a true king, like that have opened the conversation to sex education with their children because of it. So that is incredible. I got very lucky because Geraldine Kemper loved the idea. So she was the first person to post a post having seen it on the street. And so it really picked it up, like the community in Amsterdam picked it up right away and everyone was looking out for it. So the messages were incredible. Women saying that they have never received so much pleasure in one night. Uh,
The
yeah,
guys
but
got the message. They
the
understood the
guys got
assignment.
the message. Yeah, yeah. Nobody wants to. Will go home after that and not try to be a king.
Yeah. It was a public service.
Yes, but I think I like to think.
Yeah. Well, and with so many messages that are, I mean, this gentleman calling you he's not acting alone. This is a very common notion that children should be protected. But what we know is that children aren't protected from negative messages about the normalization of what sex should look like is, I mean, as much as we try, YouTube is a public space, or all these places where children go are not protected. So it's like, I see it as an inoculation. Like, the kids are getting all these messages we don't want them to have, whether we want to or not. This is actually a really positive and
Powerful
playful
message.
message. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think exactly what you're saying, that, and this kind of goes into effect in how I view how now they're doing age verification. I think in the United States, they're trying to implement this for porn. And it's such a double edged sword. Kids are going to access porn anyways. So we may as well actually be putting out porn or content or educational materials that are showing authentic pleasure, showing real bodies, showing like sex education and sex as not performative, but that's real. Because they are going to get around this, they are going to find it, and also this is an amazing opportunity to educate them. And that was what was so amazing to me, was all these parents that were coming to me saying, "Oh my gosh, like I." My kid had these questions and I was able to show them your art, like, or like this helped me approach it in a fun way with them, because it can be, I find talking about it awkward with them. So
Yeah. It's a
that's been
cartoon.
incredible. It's a
You're not,
cartoon.
yeah, it's a cartoon. And that, I think, is part of the brilliance of how you approach this. Is it's a cartoon. They look very innocent. They look very like genuine. And genuine in the way, like, they're, this guy's like basically inviting everyone to be a king, right? It's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah.
So
It's calling in. It's like
yeah,
a
calling in.
positive message instead of calling people out. So it's also
Yeah.
a positive message for men.
Yeah. And so I have 3 questions, so I have to decide which way to go. But what I want to know is what your journey was to this, because it sounds like you're bringing the people in your community and your followers along on your own journey. And so it, maybe it didn't start with the breakup that brought you to Amsterdam, but tell me where your own journey started with the orgasm gap is it just one beginning of realizing, I mean, is the phrase that I could use for you that you realize we've been lied to?
Yeah, I felt gypped. I felt like scammed by life, that I didn't realize that female pleasure was valid. And I think my journey with my cartoons is And it's been with sexuality, it's been with relationships. I think it started with, for instance, learning about attachment theory and learning, wait, you can say what you want in a relationship. Like that is allowed. I
Yeah.
didn't know that. I thought I was supposed to just be quiet. I thought that the anxious avoidant, the push pull relationships, the highs and lows were the only way. In fact, those were the aspirational way. So
Yeah.
I think it started just with relationships in general and realizing, wait, there's other ways that I can act, that I can be like to be closer to my authentic self. And then that also happened when it came to pleasure. I remember having a partner of mine, he went down on me. I had an orgasm and he kept going down on me. And I was like, "I already came." And he goes, "Yeah, I know. Let's go for round 2." And I was like, "Wow, I never knew that somebody could like care that much about my pleasure or even get pleasure from providing me pleasure because
Yeah.
that was also for him as well."
Yeah.
And my own journey with that
And
and
I want to
I'm
ask
sorry, yeah,
right in there,
yeah.
do you feel part of this is cultural? Because I think, at least I'm also American, and so the messages we receive may be different because we grew up in different part of the countries and we're probably different generations. But I think it is a bit cultural. Do you think part of this transformation was a bit cultural?
Part of my transformation, you mean moving here?
Yeah, so like dating in a different culture,
Yeah.
because from all accounts, Dutch people are more direct. They would say that, I think. And so is that part of this for you, or did it have?
Yeah, I think a lot of the shame around sexuality is 1,000% cultural. I receive messages from people that grew up not knowing that or like that women should not have desire, that
Yeah.
they grew up religious, not talking about sexuality in general, that they're still having to unlearn all of this because they have such they viewed sex as good or bad or for children or for not. So I think a lot of this is cultural. I think in my own experience, the guy, for instance, that this was with, he was actually American.
Hmm.
So,
Good.
so
That's
yeah,
good.
one point for the states.
Yeah, good. No, that's good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
But I guess I'm projecting a bit here, but like in the States, when I was growing up, I was always too direct. And I moved here and
mhm,
people were like, we cannot understand what you want. And so I always have this like story of I'm not direct enough for the States. I'm too direct for the States. I'm not direct enough for here. And so I'm saying the same thing. I'm the same me, but in two different places, I'm too much and not enough. That makes sense.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and so I imagine in dating or in sex, those things, those themes might come up culturally or whatever. So I just wondered what part of that was. And also I think Amsterdam's a city that can handle this cartoon as well.
Definitely, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think indeed I was coming here, I was dating all these different people, um, and I was being exposed to different cultures and how they view pleasure. And I mean I definitely can see different lines of how this has translated throughout different cultures, but I would say the biggest thing was my evolution in myself. And I think being less dependent on which partner I happen to get and how they view my pleasure, and more
Yeah.
self reliant and realizing, okay, no, my pleasure is valid. And I think in the beginning of this, I had felt lied to, and my initial reaction was anger. So I've gone through a big evolution in that, and I think many can relate. You feel like you've been gypped. And so I had zero tolerance for anyone who didn't show that they valued my pleasure, and I would call them out. And
Yeah.
in more recent years, I've learned to call them in because you have no idea what their story is. And I've had amazing conversations with somebody who, with different people, one who never went down on me. And I had said to him, like, you never go down on me. And he said, oh, because all of his exes would push him away or they would feel insecure. And I'm like, oh no, I want that. And then he went down on me all the time and he
Yeah.
liked it too.
Wow.
And so I started to give people the space to meet me and explore things with more curiosity because we all have so much shame, but all, every one of us, and we bring that all that baggage into the bedroom.
Yeah, of course. It's so true. And I think that one person's journey usually is reflective of the collective. So I think that just because you are speaking about it, you're furthering the conversation. I think there's been a collective like awareness around this, and we don't ever think that men or women are sitting over there going, oh, good, that's all part of my evil plan. But calling out is then the process of being able to call in my
Yeah.
experience. So going through the calling out process is maybe as hard as it is to look back, or maybe it's not. It it ends up in a good place. Cool. So I want to circle back to how the cartoon started, because it didn't start with this one cartoon on the street. You already had the characters for Vanilla Cool Dance. So tell me a little bit about that evolution of the evolution of the art and the characters, or not the characters of the king and queen, but your style.
Yeah. So I had been living in this student flat and I was unemployed. I was heartbroken. I was incredibly embarrassed about my life situation. And I realized that instead of being sad about it, maybe I could do something with this to create a more empowered version. So I made the decision that every day for 1 year, I was going to draw about my cringy, embarrassing stories that made me feel insecure, but spin them in a more empowered, fun way. And I did. And every day for a year, I drew about my life, and that's from day one. It was Vanilla Cool Dance, and I used the name Vanilla Cool Dance because it was my first AOL Instant Messenger screen name from the 90s. And I used to be so embarrassed about it back then that when I decided to make an account all about turning my shame and my embarrassment into empowerment and reclaiming this narrative, I brought back the screen name. So
Nice.
that's how that started. Yeah.
You were bringing everything. You were ashamed. All the stuff you hated was coming out.
Yeah.
I love that.
And if you scroll back, it was very self-deprecating,
Yeah.
very self-deprecating humor, but that's what I needed at the time too.
Yeah. It reminds me a little bit of Carolyn Elliott is her name, her existential kink. I don't know if you're familiar
Ooh,
with her
no,
work.
I'll have
She's
to
a
see it.
she's a mentor of mine, but she's a great one. You'll enjoy it, but it reminds me of what we bring our shadows out and play with them. And now you've created something really, really special. And so were you drawing before? Is that something that you have always done?
No, I was a art director and interested in graphic design. So I've always been a creative, but I never thought I could draw. And I still wouldn't say that I could draw anything other than the current style that I have. And I think what inspired me was I took some Skillshare classes, and there was one by Mari Andrew. And it was more on what is the story that you want to tell and less on how does it look. And I also love, for instance, hyperbole and a half is another great example. And and Sticks, who is a street artist and has sculptures that are stick figures, but I find them incredibly emotional. And
Yeah.
so once I could get past that, then I started drawing, and my style kind of evolved into something very unique to me along the way.
Yeah. Amazing. And so between this first, the king and queen thing was at least 3 years ago, the first one.
Yeah, I think 4 years ago now.
4 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. It was kind of like when we were all unfurling from COVID. I feel like
Yeah.
that was the moment. Like we were all kind of like crawling out. We were able to see each other, and then this was a moment for me at least where this appeared on the street, and it just made me laugh because it was something that was also I was like, did somebody read my mind or
Yeah, I
um
think that was also part of it. It was the first King's Day indeed when we could all be back out in the streets, and I was like,
yeah.
we need to make sure we're doing this in the right way.
Yeah, and it felt like a moment where we could rewrite stories, right? We'd all had some time inside. In Amsterdam, maybe not as much as other places. I don't know what your COVID was like, but mine was much more connected than a lot of other people, where we were being careful, but we were having coffee walks and these things.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
it felt like there was street art again, or a sign of things being different. So that was nice. But since then, how would you say your message has evolved, or has it? Or I think you've really broadened your scope a bit, or maybe you have not. So
Oh
tell me.
yeah. Well, I love that. I mean, I've done other street art since. So I've done work in the US after Roe v. Wade was overturned a few, yeah, I can't believe now I'm saying this, I guess, 4th of July's ago. So, with provocative artwork to raise funds for Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
I have done pride campaigns in Amsterdam. And I would say that the scope of my work has evolved. I mean, I've niched quite a bit, but then of course it gets wider. So I have become more interested in exploring my own sexuality and different relationship dynamics and dabbling in different worlds like the kink community and the Tantra community to understand what we can learn from those in terms of pleasure, in terms of communication.
Yeah.
And so those are some new areas that I've been exploring more in my work.
Yeah. And I think that again, I think that it's such a brilliant way to explore them with a cartoon because these words, and I don't know if you're familiar, like I did a TED talk last year about finances and marriage and partnership and unpaid labor. And my initial idea was I wanted to compare it to like kink, like
Mm,
the way our economy works. We had to walk that back because when people hear these words, they can't they can't hit the palate. Like they can't hit
mm,
our brains without it being dangerous. There's all these words that we can't
mm.
these words are not neutral.
No.
And so the way that you're able to use them and with your cartoons makes it so people can actually, it gets to that free, at least my experience of them is it's a really brilliant way to get through to talk about something really important, like communication, like power, like everything that's everyone kind of wants to talk about or wants to, but we can't because the words have too much power. And so again, I wanted to do like, we're all in a big kink with finances. Like we're in a power game that we love. That's why it's still here. Like we
Mm.
rely on it. It gets us off. It makes us feel powerful. It makes us feel unpowerful. But that was
I
not
would
going
have loved to come to your talk.
to. We did not do it. We ended up doing it.
Yeah.
We ended up really walking it back because I didn't want the words to be lost. I didn't want the
Mm,
message to be lost. And
mm.
so what I love about your work is you're using, I love a lot of things about it, but what I think is that it's a brilliant move to use your cartoon, your medium, to explore these things and be so open with your, would you refer to it as audience, followers? Like, what is your word you use?
Yeah, my community.
Yeah,
And
your community. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I cartoons just make it approachable and they disarm people and I think we need that when it comes to talking about this stuff. Unfortunately, we
Yeah,
need
no,
that.
it
Yeah.
is what it is.
Yeah.
But do you find that you're braver or because you're incredibly brave to, we feel like we know what's going on with you a little bit, right? We don't. We don't really, but you're giving us these glimpses. And so do you think the cartoon makes you be able to say more than you would otherwise if you were just writing on Substack or something?
Yeah. Yeah. And I do write on Substack and I
Yeah.
find it harder and I find it more vulnerable and more scary because the cartoon does create a small separation, even when I say it's about me. For instance, my following is so kind and I try to answer every single DM. I start sharing a little bit more on my personal account as well. I and on my Substack, and I am aware of like ratio of men to women. Maybe ends up being more men on Substack that follow me, and maybe it's because I put my photos as opposed to only cartoons. I'm not sure the reason, but I do notice that it makes me feel a little bit more vulnerable, especially as a woman working in this
Yeah.
space. So there
Yeah.
is a lot that the and yet I also find it important to show the human behind it because, for instance, I think there was a cartoon where it was about body hair, and then I showed like me, um, what is it like trimming my whiskers. And I think there is something grounding in the fact that, oh yeah, this is a real person too, and that does feel scarier, and that does feel more vulnerable in a way. But I think finding this balance of there is a human behind this, and yeah, adds a bit more depth and realness to it.
Yeah. But it's also very brave because I
Thank
remember early in my career ending a few projects because I was physically afraid for my safety. And so that you're showing other women that it's okay to tell your story. And so I think that that's cool. But what I want to know is what you're learning about these things, because you're finding it very important to go on this journey, which I love. And you're sharing it with us, which I love. But what would you say you're learning? And you don't have to say, this is where you are in your process right now. I'm talking to you on this day. In 10 years, you might be somewhere different. But at this moment, what are you learning through Tantra and Kink and BDSM and all these things? What are your, like, report to us from the inside
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
second?
sure. Gosh, so many things. I think that when you go to these more niche spaces, there's a level of awareness around communication, consent, boundaries, feeling for yourself, like your own boundaries that we, I guess, in the mainstream don't discuss. So when we talk about consent, people think, oh my God, Me Too movement. And okay, yes, she said yes. Versus to me, when I enter these more niche spaces, we really unpack what does consent look like, at what and how sexy it can be. How
Mhm.
you can have a conversation with somebody and they say, okay, like my boundary is I want you to like lightly stroke my thigh and then your hand can hover above my penis, but I don't want like touch.
Mhm.
And you're like, oh, I didn't even think about something that like specific. And then
Yeah.
it gets you thinking like, where is my actual boundary? Because we're so used to saying yes, no,
Black
and
and white. Yeah.
black and white when there's all this grayness. Another thing that I recently learned is these temple nights in Tantra, they ask you sometimes mid play, and you don't need to be playing, but mid experience, are you still where you want to be? Because maybe you don't want to be in the same place that you did 1 minute ago or where you want to be in 1 minute. And just constantly having these check ins
Yeah.
that these spaces have taught me the most is how to communicate boundaries, desire, and also how to connect better with myself to really feel in to me, even if I need to take a beat and come back to it. What is it that I really want?
Yeah.
Where is my boundary and am I being honest with the other person? Because when I overstep my own boundaries, even though it's not the other person's fault, that's also not nice to them. Like, that's
Yep.
also a disservice to the other person because they think you're enjoying yourself when you're really not. And so I've learned so much from these spaces.
This goes way beyond sex, right?
Oh,
That
yeah. This is
th- this is cultural. This is in your everyday life. This changes your perception. Like I said, it changes my perception of the entire world economy. Like
completely.
this again, these themes you get to explore because it's such an extreme. It's not extreme. We find it extreme, but it's not extreme. It's actually rather. It's a it's a transpersonal experience that helps you learn about yourself, and that's why it makes me sad that these words and these experiences are so taboo, but why I love that you're pulling them through in your cartoons because we can talk about them. And so what else? Like what is the most, maybe pull that through to being an international person. So you're living abroad now 6 years? No, it's longer.
Almost 10. Yeah.
Almost 10. Yeah, sorry. We're about the same. And I feel like what I can apply through these themes, communication, culture, I find them I find having a visa very dom sub. You know what I mean? Like I find these themes pull through for me in international living. And so how have you explored that at all? I'm just curious.
I haven't, but I love that. And I mean, you think of all these I mean, I'm in an incredibly privileged position to be here. I was able to get a Polish passport, but I know so many people that are trying to stay in the Netherlands, for instance, or trying to move, and they're definitely in a dom sub relationship with the government. You know, being and I haven't thought about it though, so I'm definitely going to think about it more after. But indeed, into how these similar to what you were saying about finance, how these themes that people are so afraid of talking about transcend into every relationship dynamic we have, career, like it's all in our interpersonal dynamics.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think what your work does is brings it out into the open, and maybe we'll start using different words, but I really think, not to be too dramatic about it, but I think these types of things can really change the world a bit. They can shift. They can shift the world a little bit just because we can talk about it through a cartoon, right?
Yeah.
But what I know from your work more broadly, your community, is that you really are living this, what you're giving to us. And so why do you think it's so important for you, for yourself, and for maybe your mission in life right now? Because I think you find this is one of the things you're supposed to do here, right? When you've opened yourself up to a lot of different spaces. So becoming sex educator, one of the sex educator of the year, or these things. What is it, do you think, that is emerging for you when you go into these spaces? Are you finding more safety in the world? Are you expressing different parts of yourself? Are you exploring different themes? Is there something? Sorry, I'm asking you such deep questions, but
Yeah.
I think you
No,
can do
this
it.
is great. Yeah. Yeah, I think I am finally becoming the woman I was meant to be, and the woman wouldn't that would be if if she didn't grow up, you know, learning to feel shame due to society, due to my lived experiences. And I think that that we're all born into this world free from shame, but along the way we dim our light, we learn to make ourselves smaller, we stop communicating, and this permeates everything. This shows up in how we do our job. This shows up in what we believe we should, you know, how far we can go in life. And it just makes me so sad that nothing we feel is in isolation, and we all feel it. And nobody's talking about it. We are all, I have thousands of people that share their stories with me, and thousands of others that share the same story with me. So if it's so beautiful to realize that what you are going through alone, you're not so special after all. You're not going through it alone. All of us are going through something. And if we just talked about it more, we would be able to live so much more confidently, because it loses its power in conversations, and it loses its power in openness.
Yep.
And I think that's what my mission is. And I think through Vanilla Cool Dance, she started as a very aspirational character of mine and a part of me. And I think the longer I live with her and draw her and experience this, is I get to embody what I share with the world, and I become we start to merge. And we were not always like that, and now my character and myself have really started to find one another in the past 5 years, 4 years.
Wow. Very, you're a method actor.
Yeah, I'm method drawing.
You're method drawing. No, I love it. That's perfect. Well, and I think all art is an expression of a part of ourself. And so
Mm,
it's cool to have that be a person. Well, it's personified for you, I
yeah.
guess. And so when you're drawing, you're pretty, like, it's pretty clear that you've had either an experience like it or a series of experiences like it. Has anyone you're dating ever approached you and been like, "Hey, too close"?
Like, not sure what you're drawing here. Like, not
Yeah,
sure I'm into
yeah,
this.
yeah. Have they been like,
Yeah.
"Hey, you can't draw that," or have they
Yeah.
been like, "That looks too much like me," or has there ever been an experience like that?
Not like that. I Luckily, my two, like, last boyfriends have both been amazing, and super supportive, and always would brainstorm with me even. So they would come up with ideas with me. I think it would be different if they it was one for one, but my male characters, especially, like, besides skin color and hair color, they have the kind of the same face. So
Yeah, okay.
it's more anonymous. So I felt very supported by them. Recently I had a situation where I felt very uncomfortable and dismissed when meeting somebody's family, and he made me feel very uncomfortable whether or not he intended to with the work I do. So that was an unfortunate experience, but I I think this will always be a part of me, and obviously when I meet the right person, how much of we share of our personal life is very open for discussion, but to be able to draw and process through art, that's something that I definitely want to keep.
Yeah. No, that's amazing. And it's actually a really, I mean, maybe you feel this. I felt this as being an artist as a woman and being kind of more public about my life is it's not just my story. As a woman, it's never just your story.
Yeah.
So the heroine's journey, in my opinion, is a community story.
Yeah,
So
I
whenever
agree.
whenever I'm telling my story, it's also my husband of 22 years' story. It's my kid's story. And so I always maybe I'm too sensitive about it, but I'm always editing very creatively what I tell and what I don't tell. And so I think it's really I would love if you would keep I would love to see Vanilla Cool Dance's take on motherhood, on,
Mm.
like aging, on, I hope you keep her with you as you go throughout your life. And you're younger than I am, but this level of bravery, in my opinion, is needed in women's stories. And so I
Mhm.
love that you're sharing it. So if I can give you that reflection, it's not easy. Um, and my partner and I did this with the TED Talk because it was his story too, because we've been
Yeah,
together so long. And that's a very tender process, I would say, with women's stories. And so I hope you keep doing it even past whatever, wherever life takes you. I hope you keep commenting and letting us in and softening and giving us these insights because they're invaluable.
thank you. Yeah, and I really understand that the editing, and I think when you have other people involved in your story. And I notice that more when I write my Substack because it's longer
Mhm.
form. You know, in a single panel cartoon, there's not so much. You're distilling a singular moment.
Yep.
And in those, I've really had no problem. And then when I start to expand on them in longer form storytelling, I have been more cautious or sensitive or, um, yeah, in my head about making sure I'm respectful or making sure the other
Yeah.
person has time to read it first. That I'm not causing harm accidentally by sharing my story.
Yeah. But what I've noticed, at least, and what I would like to give to you is make sure you're not leaving parts out just to, I don't think you will do this, but there gets to a point where you can't not hurt people.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. I have a few stories that I have in the bank probably because I'm waiting to one of the greatest lessons I learned is to write from a healed, not a healed wound but a scabbed wound,
Hmm.
because
Not an
when
open
you
wound.
are not an open wound, because when
Yeah.
you're sharing from an open wound, you're so exposed to the world's thoughts, and if you haven't processed it yourself, that can be very difficult. So that's been a big lesson to me to share from a scabbed wound, or there must be a better way to say this, a closed wound, than a bleeding
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, that's such good advice. Yeah. And another story I heard is about a warrior who someone was convinced they were going to kill them, and they pull their sword out and they don't kill them. And then they come back the next time. This person is convinced they won't kill them because they didn't last time, but then they pull out their sword and kill them. And they said, "What was the difference? Why didn't you kill them the first time?" He said, "The first time I was angry."
Oh, that's so yeah, that's amazing. What a
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. So,
Now you can
so
kill him with a clear head.
yeah, but also not in anger, right?
Yeah, I love that.
Sometimes things need to be done. And so this is what my last question is for you.
Mhm.
We're wrapping up on time, but you mentioned something that really resonated with me, and it's part of a movement which you said at the beginning you were very angry, and now you're able to call people in instead of calling people out. Tell me about that process. It's a really important process, collectively, relationally, women in general. And I hate to universalize your story so much, but you are a brilliant example of what's happening for a lot of women in general. tell me about that process. Like, what have you learned more
Yeah.
broadly?
Yeah. And I mean, I think you see this with every aspect of society and with new movements that
Yeah.
come up, and how it creates polarization. And I mean, com- I'm I have very strong values and very strong principles. So it's not on me swaying within those values or principles, but it's, the pendulum swings in one direction. And I realized that my anger wasn't helping me connect with what I really wanted. So ultimately, I would like a partner. Ultimately, I want to have amazing sex. I don't want to just show up with anger and assumption, and the person sitting in front of me is not the world. They're not the everything I had experienced up until that point. And they had their own upbringing and their own lived experiences. And I think it's really scary what is happening in the world. It's really scary with the rabbit holes of content that you can get served on Instagram and these echo chambers. And the more that we can bridge curiosity in our interpersonal lives and realize, like, okay, ultimately we want a win-win here. Ultimately, like, hopefully your partner wants to be a good partner. Hopefully the person you're dating wants to show up for you and approach things from a place from compassion and curiosity while still holding your boundaries and still holding your standards. And I think we will get closer to, where we want to be, and collectively start to heal.
Yeah. What I want to ask in that process is, do you think there's a way of doing this without that alchemizing first, that anger?
No, but I think that you can. I think anger is a natural, or disappointment is a natural reaction when you realize that you could have had it differently, and when
Mhm.
you realize that life could have been different. I think how quickly you cycle through that anger, or how you handle that anger, or how you react to that anger, or channel it is more in your control. And
Yeah.
I mean, I can still be angry for sure,
Yeah.
and I was part of it. For years
Yeah.
I would draw cartoons that were very anti-men, very calling men out, and they were funny, and men followed me too because they also laughed at them because I made it in cartoon form. Um, and every once in a while, I'll still do it too because it's
Yeah.
also okay.
Yeah.
But I realized I was part of this. If a female follower that was following me and soaking up all this content, that they're gonna leave feeling, um, I don't know, better than the men that are out there, which is not what I want to feed. I don't want to feed that anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a life lesson to know how to channel anger and how to recognize it. And so I think it's an important lesson, honestly, and that's one that I think you're also teaching us. And alchemizing. So if artists like you can alchemize in a group way this anger, collectively we can move to a, I don't want to say a more productive, because this kind of anger, this is
Yeah,
just my
I
opinion
think it is. Yeah,
from
we
my
need
own
it
process.
too.
Yeah. But learning how to use it well is something that, at least for myself, um, has been a lesson for me. So I just wanted to
Mm,
hear what your
yeah,
experience has been with
yeah.
it. So
Thank
it's
you.
really a pleasure to see, for me at least, other women going through this process and
Yeah,
getting to this place where they take their place as creators, and not going through all the stages of warrior, like tearing it down, building it back up.
yes,
Um,
yeah,
and
yeah.
things
And I
we,
think
yeah,
anger isn't a bad emotion,
no,
and if we're all just like passive, and like, that's also not enough fire to create change either. So we need
yeah,
both. I love what you
yeah,
said.
good. Well, I have asked you so many hard questions. Thank you for hanging with me. And thank you for the work you're doing. I would love to see, I want to see your work on being an expat, like, and being an international person. Just if my plug is to have an
Noted.
annoying expat cartoon at some point, or annoying tourists. No, but the themes you're exploring are super interesting. I love the work you're doing in the world, and I can't wait to bring it to our listeners and also, watch you keep creating in the world.
Thank you. Well, it was such a joy talking to you, and I loved your questions and this conversation. So thank you
Yeah,
for
good.
having me.
Good. Thanks for coming on. And thank you so much for listening to today's episode of the House of Peregrine podcast. Please like and subscribe, and please leave a comment. I read every single one, and we love hearing your input. See you next time.
Okay, that's it for today. I hope you've enjoyed our show. For the latest insights on living internationally, join us at houseofperegrine.com to find out how you can connect with our community. Let's craft our life story with intention together.